Episode 9 of What If, the Denver Gazette video series, where we look back at the biggest what ifs in Colorado sports. And today's topic, I didn't feel anybody would be better than Denver Gazette sports editor Paul Klee, because we're talking 2009 Denver Nuggets. Paul, how you doing? And, I feel like you're the best to talk about this team.
I'm so fired up for this conversation, Chris. That was about it was longer than 6 weeks. It was like a 2 or 3 month stretch of just must see basketball every other night. So
Yeah.
when you came up with this idea, I was stoked.
Yeah. Before we dive really into the topic, I was thinking about this because, now I've worked with you now since September, and you've gotten to know me a little bit that I love hoops, and the NBA and the Denver Nuggets are my thing. I still play hoops and I know over 40 leagues somehow, but first game is March 1st over at the Broomfield Rec Center. But anyway, so I was thinking, Denver Nuggets teams that have stuck with fans, because I think that this '09 team is one. I think the 93-94 Sonics beating the Sonics team, which unfortunately fell apart because of injuries and free agency and other things. The bubble run. With that, those are the three that come to mind. I don't remember. I know they went to the Western Conference Finals in '85, I think, and lost to the Lakers. I mean, I was 6, so I don't really know much about that one. Another one that came to mind was from the time they lost that game in Minnesota through the whole next season was one I always remembered, when they won 54 games, just like this '09 team. So I wanted to ask you, being a hoops guy yourself, what Nuggets team really resonates with you?
Gosh, anyone with Mahmoud on it.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, he was back when I was a fan. Your fandom changes once you cover a franchise for a long time. So it's not the same anymore. But back then, growing up here in Denver, the Nuggets were, our team. And part of that was because they were bad.
Yeah.
The Broncos were always good. And if they weren't good now, they're going to be good in the near future. That's how the Broncos were. The Nuggets were bad. So you could go to games for, $10. I mean, It really was that cheap. And if you went to the right usher, she would let you down low.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So you could be at McNichols, for nothing. And we could afford that. We could go to a lot of Nuggets games. They had fun teams that were bad teams, but they had guys that were, I thought, really likable. Mahmoud, I had 3 athletes growing up that I looked up to. Mahmoud was probably number one, because it was a shock when he missed.
Yeah.
When it
he
left
Steph Curry before Steph Curry.
He was. And he was an unbelievable watch, and he was small. So, a lot of us could relate to him. He wasn't 6'9", 240. But him, Iverson, Georgetown, Allen Iverson, and for God knows what reason, I was a Duke fan until like 1998, and probably because they were on TV all the time.
Because everybody was.
Yeah, and so like Grant Hill, and everybody was, and then that changed when Coach K yelled at me into Maui Invitational. But I love Mahmoud, and I like Brian Stith, and all those guys. We liked Rafe until we realized they could have had Vince Carter.
Yeah.
So those teams probably resonated with me the most because I watched the most Nuggets ball then. Even Hanslick's team, when they won 11 games,
Right.
they were the worst team in NBA history. But then also another one would be 2003 when Melo comes.
Yeah.
Because it was the first time when you said, oh, the Nuggets got one of those guys.
Yeah.
And they made a couple of really smart moves. They bring Andre Miller in. Nene was really good. But this '09 team was different because it was really the first time that I could remember the Nuggets. You could say the Nuggets are the best team in the NBA. And there was about a 6-week or 2-month stretch when it felt that way, that this team was going to win the whole thing. So I think this is an awesome conversation you came up with.
So, you're talking about Melo, and of course, Melo is a huge part. This is peak Nuggets Melo, I think, in '09 for sure. He had just gotten done with the Olympic team with Kobe Bryant, with who they ended up facing off with in the finals, of course. But I remember, listening to the '03 draft lottery on the radio, because that's the LeBron draft too, of course. And the Nuggets won 17 games or whatever. Them and the Cavs were the worst team. And I'm like, oh my goodness, the Nuggets are going to get LeBron James. Now, I'd also just watched Carmelo Anthony blitz through the NCAA tournament. You know, he was the man in that NCAA tournament. And I was like, oh, I'd take him too. And then there was the Darko question and all that. But, you know, that was scary for Nuggets fans because they didn't know if they would have taken Darko. It really could have happened. And who knows where we're at then. We're probably not talking about this '09 Nuggets team. But so I'm going to dive in a little bit to the '09 Nuggets. But first, you know, the 2 seasons before are the Allen Iverson, Carmelo Anthony experiment seasons.
Mm-hmm.
No playoff success at all. They lose 4-1 to the Spurs, and then they just get swept by the Lakers the next season. I believe there was a bit of a rift between Melo and George Karl during that series. They had no chance. The Lakers go to the finals that year and lose to Boston. So I believe that was a 1-8, but the Nuggets still won 50 games that year, but was an 8 seed. So that's how stacked the West was that year. So they go into this '09 season. They start 1-2. And then the Nuggets decide to make a huge trade. And it's a trade that altered the whole season. They trade Allen Iverson to Detroit for hometown legend Chauncey Billups. Chauncey changes everything for the Nuggets. His leadership proves to be great for Carmelo. I think they clicked right away from what I could tell. The team was different. The rest of their starting 5, Kenyon Martin, who, you know, we all know what Kenyon Martin was. Nene at center, who had kind of blossomed into a pretty good player. People didn't know who he was, and they picked him 10th in that draft, but he turned into a pretty good, decent player. And then they had Dante Jones, who we'll mention later, him and Kobe getting into it a little bit in the finals. They also had a bench of Birdman, Chris Anderson, J.R. Smith, some Linus Kleza off the bench, and one of George Karl's favorite players, Anthony Carter, who we'll also get to later. So the Nuggets roll pretty much through the season. The Lakers are beyond the best team in the West. They win 65 games that year. The Nuggets go 54-28, tied for the 2nd seed with the Spurs and the Blazers. Nuggets own every tiebreaker, so they're the 2 seed. This is easily Carmelo Anthony's most complete season in Denver, I would say. He just looks like he looks like a man on a mission in this season. And, you know, this season is very interesting because it's also the first season that LeBron wins the MVP with the Cavs. Wow. They win like 67 games, and then they lose to Orlando, who is also in this story later. You know, the West was the Spurs are still good. The Mavs are still there. Lakers, the Nuggets are right there. But the Nuggets, as the 2 seed draw the New Orleans Hornets, they were then in the first round, who also had young Chris Paul. This was not the Chris Paul who gets, you know, kind of now the old veteran. This is young Chris Paul. This series is just not even close. Denver wins in 5 games. The average margin of victory is 30.5 points because the Nuggets win game 4 by 58
on the road.
New Orleans, which is still a playoff record. They just blew them out in game 4 and then came home and won in game 5.
That's still a record.
Yeah, it is. That game, I remember, you know, that was a different time, and I didn't have a chance to watch that game, and I went on ESPN. I'm like, wait, what's the score? And that was one of those games where you had to double check. So in the second round, the Nuggets catch a little bit of a break because Dallas beats the Spurs. So they dodge San Antonio, and now this is still like Dirk's Mavs. Like this is the Dallas team that wins the title in 2011. So they're still a pretty good team. But the Nuggets roll them too, except for game 3, where Melo hits a game winner when they were trying to foul him, and then he still hit a 3 to win that game. Mavs win game 4, and then the Nuggets close it out in game 5. So 2 5-game series. They really looked, like you said, like one of the best teams in the NBA. This sets up the showdown with Kobe Bryant and the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals. The Nuggets have only been to the Western Conference Finals one other time before this, which was 1985, where they also played the Los Angeles Lakers. And then again in 2020, where they again played the Los Angeles Lakers. You see the pattern here. This is the series that this was the biggest test for the Lakers. The Nuggets were the biggest test for the Lakers in these playoffs because they had no problem after beating the Nuggets in 6 games in this series. Game 1 in Staples, the Nuggets are actually up big in the first half. Lakers come all the way back, close down the stretch. Melo and Kobe are just going mano a mano in this game. It's unbelievable. I think Kobe had 40 and Melo had 35 or something like that.
9, yeah.
Yeah. The Nuggets are down 101 99 with under a minute to go when they have the ball. Unfortunately, the decision to have Anthony Carter, who is a 6'2" point guard, inbound the ball backfires on the Nuggets. He throws it away to Trevor Ariza. The Lakers close it out. Nuggets lose game 1. But the good news is the Nuggets come back in game 2 and beat the Lakers in LA to earn a split. We were talking about, the Nuggets' home dominance this season. They were 33-8 at home. You felt pretty good as a Nuggets fan coming back to Denver for game 3 and 4 that the Nuggets were going to possibly be leading this series after game 4 because they just didn't lose at home that year. Well, game 3, they do lose at home. A game that they are leading the whole way until the fourth quarter. Kobe Bryant becomes Kobe Bryant. And the Lakers outscore the Nuggets 32-18 in the fourth. And the Nuggets lose game 3. Nuggets come back and roll the Lakers in game 4. So the series is tied at 2. They go back to LA. That game 5 is nip and tuck, but the Lakers pull it out 103-94. And then coming back to game 6, that was a weird game. And the Lakers just kind of rolled and blew out the Nuggets. And the Lakers move on to the NBA Finals, where they play Orlando because Orlando had beaten LeBron and the Cavs in the Eastern Conference Finals. And the Lakers end up winning Kobe wins his first title without Shaq, pretty much. So, Paul, I'm going to ask you, after all of that, if the Nuggets win that series, what happens?
Well, it's not a slam dunk. Orlando was the 3 seed, but it was still a 59-win team.
Yes.
And it was the best defensive team in the NBA. Best defensive rating. You had young Dwight Howard. He's in his 4th year. He's a force. The issue with the Lakers is you ran into the one man on earth that you weren't going to beat.
Yep.
And it was the game 1. I remember I was in Chicago. I was covering the Big Ten at the time. And it felt like when Kobe had 40, it was 1 point more than Melo had. It was kind of like, we're friends, but I'm still better than you. And I'll have 1 more point than you and we'll win game 1. I thought the series was lost in game 1. I did. I think if you're able to close that out, it sets a tone for the rest of the series. So I actually think that Lakers series, this is kind of a bizarre hot take, but I think it was lost in the previous round. The Rockets took a good Rockets team, took the Lakers to 7.
That's right.
And that's a Rockets team with Meta World Peace, McGrady, Stola, Aaron Brooks is on that team. I think Yao Ming was probably their leading scorer. They take him to 7. So you're watching that series going, if you dodge Kobe, you got a shot. But the Lakers have been a thorn in the side of the Nuggets going back to the 80s. This is something that still exists. So as far as the Magic, while I think the Nuggets, I still think it's a 6 or 7 game series. I think the Nuggets were a little bit better because they were the best offensive team in the playoffs. And offense beats great offense beats great defense. I think you beat Orlando, but it's not a slam dunk. I think the 3 seed is a little bit deceiving. That was a really good Orlando team. The Nuggets did split the season series with Orlando that year. It was 1-1. So it's probably a 7 game series, but at least you're in the finals and you don't have that monkey on your back that they still have, which they're still facing today, 13 years later. So I remember, Chris, that night that they made the trade, both nights, when they made the trade for Chauncey and when they made the trade for Iverson, it was the same guy. It was Mark Morganti.
Yep.
He made both trades. So in 2009, when he made the trade for Chauncey, he's named Executive of the Year in the NBA, well-deserved. But that, too, was not a slam dunk that the Nuggets would get better. The idea, in theory, you got a leader, a quarterback. You've got Elway. He takes number 7, all that. And that's what they needed, a maestro, an orchestrator, to get all these athletes and players, because you have so much talent, to work as one, which nobody's been better than Chauncey. But Iverson led the NBA in minutes played at the time of the trade.
He did.
Chauncey's numbers were really down before the trade. His offensive and defensive ratings had declined. His points per game, shooting percentage, almost everything had gone down. So it wasn't like it wasn't obvious that this was going to work like it did. So shout out Mark Morkentine for seeing the future and organizing what I think is probably the best Nuggets team until the one we're watching now.
So, you're talking about Orlando a little bit there. I did a little research on them. They were ahead of their time because they had Jameer Nelson at point guard, who ended up playing for the Nuggets later. But they had, guys like Hedo Turkoglu and Rashard Lewis, who were 6'10" and could shoot a three-pointer.
Right.
And
really good players.
Yeah, really good players. And they were kind of playing like basketball's played now. Mm-hmm. And I went back and watched some of these highlights of this Western Conference Finals on YouTube, and it's just a different game. It's amazing how much basketball has changed in 13 years. Mm-hmm. It's much slower. Melo's just getting down on the block and putting his arm up and wanting the ball. And, you just don't see that now. There's not as much movement. But I kind of want to go into a little bit what happens after this series, because it's pretty, it changes the franchise quite a bit. Because so the next year, they're still really good the next year. I think they were competing with the Lakers for the top seed for a while. George Karl gets sick with about 14 games to go, misses the rest of the season. They fall, they go 7-7 down the stretch and fall the 4 seed and lose to Utah in the first round. Mm-hmm. The next season, the trade stuff starts with Melo. He doesn't sign the extension in training camp, I believe. And he kind of makes it known that he wants out. And I just wonder if I still think I know that people talk about Melo in New York, but I think Melo in Denver was better than Melo in New York. I'm a Melo defender. I'll just say it right now. I am. I mean, I loved him until this current team where there's a way better number 15 now. But, I always thought that he got a bad rap because when they did make the playoffs, they were always the 6 or the 7 seed, except for this season. Mm-hmm. And they would go on the road and have to play the Spurs or the Lakers, or the series they lost to the Clippers was weird. But the other series is like they were never the favorite. Mm-hmm. And I just wonder, and I want to get your opinion on this, if they go to the finals, and even if they lose in the finals, does he want out of here?
I wish I had been covering the team at the time. My initial reaction is yes, because it was beyond basketball, the reasons that he wanted out. So that would suggest that no level of success would have kept him in Colorado. I think that you can draw there was the summit was game 2 of the Lakers series. When you even it up, it's 1-1, and it just starts to go like that, from there. Now you still have some good teams. I mean, 2012-13 was one of the most entertaining Nuggets teams that we've ever seen. That team was fantastic, with a bunch of kind of a mismatch of personalities, and they play a fast tempo and they're almost unbeatable at home, all that. But it was still, you didn't have that guy again. And so it's game 2, and then it goes like this, and then Joker gets here, and there were some dark days, man. I remember
the Brian Shaw era will be something that we'll always remember.
Yeah. It was like there was a game in that era where Nate Robinson was dancing with Rocky and they were down 30.
Yep.
I was going, when do the Buffs play? I want to go see the Buffs. Get me out of here, because there was just it was a free for all. I mean, you had a cell phone box where you put your cell phone when you went into meetings, and it was just now. In his defense, Brian Shaw had fantastic stories. His stories about how Phil Jackson at the beginning of every playoff series would give the team the black Amex card, which I guess is a real thing. You and I don't know about this.
Yeah, we don't have those. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he would tell the whole team to go out for a night before every series and get it out of your system before the series starts. Stuff like that was really entertaining, but the product on the court was just abysmal. And then Joker comes and changes everything. So to answer your question, long story short, I think he's still gone because that decision was above basketball. So that suggests that no level of success would have kept him in Denver.
It's crazy to think this will be the 20-year anniversary of him being drafted.
Goodness gracious, old.
Yeah. I mean, that just proves that how old I am and how long I've been watching basketball.
Hey,
but
I heard Pearl Jam on the classic rock station the other day. So
there you go.
Eye opener.
There you go. It's funny because after that trade, they make the playoffs that first year because they traded mid-season. And, the hard part for Nuggets fans was that they had to ship Chauncey off with him.
Mm.
as part of the trade.
Hmm.
And, but they still made the playoffs. And I believe that season, is that when they lost to Durant in OKC, like in the 4-5 matchup, I want to say.
Could have been.
And then the
Four.
next season was that year where they traded for Andre Iguodala. And actually, we had a different what if on that team. And it's crazy to think that from that Melo trade, the last pick swap was Jamal Murray.
Yeah, and you know what this shows too is I've always had this theory that the Nuggets two things have to happen for the Nuggets to be relevant. And I mean, championship relevant. You got to get lucky.
Yeah.
That's always happened. You got to have Darko go to Detroit.
Yep.
Or you got to have Joker come in the second round. You got to get lucky because those guys aren't coming here. So, or you got to be different. You got to play a really different style of ball. And that 09 team, I remember watching a game with Bruce Weber. He was the coach at Illinois at the time. We were watching the Nuggets game, and I was picking his brain on the squad. Like, how would you coach these guys? What do you see that I don't see? Because you know basketball a heck of a lot more than I do. And he said, this is the most physical team in the NBA. And it's the most physical team in the NBA in several years. That Melo, you got so tired of him by the fourth quarter beating you up that his fourth quarters were unbelievable at times.
Yep.
Because the guy he was going against was so tired of him banging into you, and then Nene is banging into you, and Kmart is just a force. He was a bulldozer. So what I'm saying is this Nuggets team is so different. This is a very physical Nuggets team. Like Aaron Gordon, you're going to be sore after the game, and you see Joker, you can't move him. But they don't have the backcourt that's six. What's Chauncey 6'5", 6'4", 6'5". He's big. And he'll beat you up for a while. So that was such an interesting, physically imposing Nuggets team, more so than we see right now. There's different ways to do it, but both teams played different types of ball, and both teams got a little bit lucky with their star.
And, the 09 team, I think this is when they started getting called the Thuggets at points.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and I think a big part of it was, I don't know if you remember, I think it was game 1 against Dallas where Kenyon Martin just shoved Dirk on the baseline. He just shoved him into the crowd. And like now he probably gets thrown out. And I don't even think it was a technical then. I don't even think maybe they call it technical on him, but it was kind of like a setting the tone moment a little bit. And then I also remember a little bit in the Western Conference Finals that Dante Jones was getting under Kobe's skin a little bit with something with kicking at his ankles didn't he try to trip him or something?
Landed on his foot. But that's what I wonder about this team, kind of translate it. Do they have a guy that's going to get under your skin?
I think KCP bothers people.
Yeah, that's a good one. But that team, think about those first 2 playoff series, man. They go 8-2, and both of the losses are by 2 points. And 7 of the 8 wins are double digits. They were on a different level at that point. And it's one of those things where I really think if the Rockets had pulled off that upset in the second round over the Lakers, you're playing in the finals and probably going 7 with Orlando.
And you were talking about the East, that Orlando was a 3 seed with 59 wins.
That's wild.
So yeah, I think LeBron and the Cavs had 66 or 67, and then Boston had 62 with KG. KG got hurt, and that's Orlando beat them in the second round. And now, go ahead.
No, so I'm thinking like now, I haven't thought about this till you just said that, but this is the rare time the East is better than the West, and the East is right now better than the West.
Yes.
Then the East was better than the West because you had those 3 juggernauts is what they were. So you got to pick your moments too. I guess that's the third thing about the Nuggets being championship relevant. You got to pick the right time. And Tim Connelly I used to ask them, can you plan for the window? And it's a complicated question is what he would say. Tim would say, they can't pick when your guys are going to peak necessarily, or when others are going to be in a valley, but you can look at salary cap. You can look at what teams are going to be able to make that Kevin Durant move like the Suns just did. So they do plan out several years in advance, or at least try to. When is your window going to be? And right now, it's hard to find a better window in the last several years than right now for these Nuggets.
Yeah, and I really think that this 09 team was probably the best team they've ever had until now. And, it remains to be seen how far this team goes in the playoffs. But I think you're right, is in 09, everything kind of lined up except for having to deal with Kobe in the Western Conference Finals. This year, everything may line up until you get to the Western Conference Finals and either Durant or Kawhi are sitting there.
I hope that happens.
Yeah. Or Steph. I guess you could have Steph Curry sitting there too. I mean, who knows what happens there, but I still I want to say that I think the Nuggets would have won the title in 09. I think it would have been hard fought with Orlando. I think Carmelo has said on record that he thinks if they beat the Lakers, they would have won the title. I think he said that in an interview somewhere. That's boasting a lot, but I think that, I think a lot of people on that Denver team feel that way. But,
Coach Carl does.
Does he?
Yeah. And I remember Kobe said after that series that he considered Carmelo a tougher cover than LeBron. And that may have been after that Olympics too, when Melo was really good. But he did say that he thought Melo was a more difficult assignment. And that was a time when it was, peak LeBron too.
Yeah, he's winning the MVP, and the Cavs was a 1 seed, but they fall short too. Well, yeah, I mean, I'd have to mention that everybody wanted Kobe LeBron in the finals, and then the Nuggets tried to spoil it, and then Orlando did spoil it. So it didn't. I mean, Denver or Orlando, I don't know how the NBA would have marketed that.
The Nuggets too, at that time, because they played such a difficult brand of basketball, a physical brand, they led the NBA in free throw attempts in the postseason. They shot 33 free throws a game.
Melo and Chauncey could get to the line. There's no doubt about it.
That doesn't happen with Joker. That's going to be a different thing in the postseason. They forced the whistle. They dictated the whistle. And I think this Nuggets team is more reactionary. It has gotten under their skin before. That team, they were intimidating. So they had it rolling, and it was a blast to watch because anything could happen. You had 4 or 5 guys that could dunk on the biggest guy on the other team. That was a dunk squad. Even Kleeza once in a while. He's the best Missouri guy to come through here, probably. I guess MPJ can spoil that.
Yeah. His 3 games he played at Missouri or whatever it was.
Does that count? I don't think that counts.
I don't think that counts. One thing before we go, and I just want to we talked about this a little bit before, but the whole Nuggets Lakers dynamic, because we could get it. I mean, you could see the Lakers going on a run, getting to the play-in and being the first round opponent of the Nuggets. It could happen. And the Nuggets fans, and I think the Nuggets in general, kind of have a complex about the Lakers because they've never beaten them in a playoff series, right? Not that I remember ever.
Nope.
They took them to 7 that one year with Ty Lawson and them. But, they've never beat them. And every time they've made the Western Conference Finals, in 85, it was Magic and Showtime. This year, it was Kobe. In 09, it was Kobe. And then in 2020, it was LeBron. So, and it's still LeBron, because it's, LeBron's never going to retire. But I just think there's a little something there with Nuggets Lakers. And if they get them in the first round and beat them, and the Nuggets beat them, that could be a little bit of a springboard, I think.
I think you're absolutely right about that. And it may not be with the team. Like if you ask Jamal, he's not going to say that that's an obstacle, a mental hurdle.
No, it doesn't matter to them. No,
it doesn't matter to them. But my degenerate Nuggets friends who don't miss a game, and it could be a Tuesday in November and they act like it's the finals. That's very much real for Nuggets fans, is that Lakers mental hurdle. So I'll root for that too. Let's root for a 1-8 game or 1-8 series and just go through all the teams that have given you issues. The Suns, get the Suns in the second round. You beat Chris Paul after they swept and embarrassed you, and Joker, the MVP, gets ejected from game 4. And then you go through the Warriors in the conference finals and you get all the hurdles off your back, all the monkeys.
Yeah. I still think they're going to get stuck with Kawhi and the Clippers at some point, but they own the Clippers. I hate saying that, but they're 3-0 against them this year. They actually play them Sunday night here in Denver. But the West this year, and we could do like a little revenge tour, I guess, like the Broncos back in '97, little revenge tour for the Nuggets.
That's right.
All right, Paul, it was fun to do this. This team will always stick with me. And talking about Nuggets degenerates, I was way into that Nuggets Cavs game last night and was getting mad at bad foul calls. So maybe I could just join that list. Evan Mobley, by the way, of the Cavs. Woo! Holy cow. He had 30 yesterday with
Good player.
Gordon out.
Good player.
And he almost won that game for the Cavs alone. But I will say, we were talking about KCP earlier. He gave Mitchell fits yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big part of why the Nuggets won. But anyway, we'll talk more about the current team. Paul, again, thanks for doing this. I think we can both agree that the Nuggets in the finals, they could have won, they could have not, who knows, but we would have got that first finals trip off the Nuggets back and everything would be better. Make sure to look for this video Monday evening at denvergazette.com, and denvergazette.com has all of our episodes of What If, with Broncos, with Buffs, with Nuggets, with Avs, with Rockies, all of it. So make sure to check that out. And Paul, we will talk to you again soon.
All right, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you.